So I read that this was an original idea from you.
Yes.
How did you come up with the story for Eenie Meanie?
I have a strange process most of the time in my writing, but I usually write a teaser, an opening scene. And, having come from a poor community, you hear stories of, kids who are too young driving around their parents because they're alcoholics. And that I thought one night, what an incredible, like, origin story for a villain or a hero. And from there, I really wanted to tell what's really a dark romantic story throughout the casing of a genre movie. And always loved the 70s, getaway car driver movies. And I thought it was an excellent, kind of opportunity to do, she has to get away from this man, just like she has to get away from any job she does. And the emotional story and romantic story of, why John, why them, and how, in poverty in poor towns, sometimes you have a very strange shape of a family. And that's the story we're telling instead of all the hijinks of the second act where you're like, we got to break in and get this superpower part for the car. Instead, we're doing this emotional detective story about this couple.
So when crafting a film like this with car chases and heist scenes, there's a lot of inspiration to be drawn from older films, as you mentioned. I was wondering if there were any films in particular that inspired the film.
When I made the director's pitch book to get the job to direct it after I had written it, I realized a funny thing. The most important thing is tone, right? I mean, it's hopefully a little daring and a little surprising that we have a little bit of everything. We have comedy, drama, action, fun, and it shifts. And when I looked at all my favorite movies, I realized they were all in this movie. And it was like The Apartment, and how every character really makes a mark, even a secretary or anything, like every single character. Raiders of the Lost Ark and how propulsive that was. Step Brothers and how silly that could be. Before Sunset and the kind of two people on a journey together. Um, and you like all of those movies ended up being in this movie somehow. I'd throw Midnight Run in there, just because I love two-handers of two people in chaotic situations. But, my dad always watched genre movies like Conan the Barbarian and Death Wish, and he showed me all those movies. And my mother was always showing me Terms of Endearment and Kramer versus Kramer and all those sad movies from the 70s. So somehow both of those things are in this too, you know.
That's great. Speaking of characters that make a mark, there's a really fun cast in this film. Apart from the main roles, there's a lot of fun actors in the supporting roles. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the casting of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I try to pride myself on, again, like The Apartment does, the movie The Apartment, every single person who comes on screen makes a mark. And I know that it's not just going to be someone who comes and goes and gives you information. I want you to feel them and give them their story very quickly. It was fun. My favorite part was the idea of casting Andy Garcia in a role that is funny. I mean, I've never seen anybody use him that way, and it excited me. While at first I was like, well, we've seen him play the kind of crime villain before, but when you put him with Mike O'Malley in this, and they're almost like a couple, like a married couple, it just ends up being a blast, And I think he was even surprised that we were going, oh, they're letting me be funny, And Carl Glusman I had not really seen before. But his audition was so funny in the end and he has a certain innocence to him that feels childish in a way that I think you're more forgiving of him and you start to fall in love with him like a lost puppy.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, in the end, I do love having a variety of spices, in the rack, as they say. And everybody should make a mark. Everybody should count.
So now that you've created this fun world with a badass Samara Weaving in it, is there any chance of a sequel or expansion of the universe?
I've brought it up before. I think the case is always let's see how it does and if people respond. And, sometimes there's talk of a prequel, I think about sometimes. Sometimes it might not even be a character you'd expect as a way in, but I definitely for sure would love to be in this universe again. for
Yeah,
sure.
a Randall Park origin story.
Oh my God, he is so funny in this movie. Don't you think he's so funny in this movie?
Yeah, he's
I
great.
would love to work with him again.